Now you're welcome along. So another Sunday, another final at Croke Park. Three of them, in fact, culminating at 4:15 with Dublin Meath in the All-Ireland football final on Sunday. Our GAA coverage is brought to you with AIB, who are at the heart of Gaelic games for both club and county. You can check out #TheToughest for more. And in Dublin and Meath, we have a repeat of this year's Leinster final, which of course Dublin won. And in All-Ireland terms, Dublin are going for a second in 3 years, and Meath, they won't love it, but the outside view is that their golden moment has rescinded a touch after 21 and 22. But obviously, were they to pull off a win on Sunday, it's 3 in 5 years, and they can sit there and lay claim to team of the 20s thus far. So lots to discuss. Happy to say here in studio, Nadine Doherty, Sunday Independent. You'll read her work there. She's the former Donegal captain. You're very welcome. Thanks for coming in. And Noelle Healy is a 5-time All-Ireland winner, 4-time All-Star, knows what this is all about. Noelle, great to have you on. You're very welcome.
Thanks very much.
So if we could, I might go big picture first about the season at large, and then we'll zoom into Sunday. Nadine, I was just mentioning to you before we start, I was wondering, in some respects, the story of like the GAA this calendar year has been the new rules in men's football, a kind of resuscitated dying patient. How does the ladies' game feel as this has all happened very much in Broadway and everyone's talking about how great it is and this is the type of football we want to see? Is the ladies' game looking at it going, God, we should move in that direction, or happy enough with their lot, or how has that played out this year?
I think overall, yeah, a lot of people would like change. It's funny, before the new rules came in, we were able to sit back and gloat in a sense that, look at our game, it's great, it's really quick, it's really fast, we don't have big blanket defences. What's happened, obviously the men's game has gone to another level. Our coaching seems to have gone backwards, I feel, this year. Meath and Dublin aside, at times they have incorporated a blanket defence, but a lot of teams have gone back to old men's rules, you could say, or old men's tactics. And I think the biggest problem with us in terms of our rules, and you would have seen it in the media a lot, it's the tackle. Apparently we're non-contact sport, which is quite funny at times. But the charge, which we'll see, we'll see how that goes Sunday. I've spoken about it before. Vicky Wall in particular is held to a very different standard to everybody else. So I think the biggest rule change that we would like, most of us, would be around the tackle. I also think that we do need to look at, if you're looking at the men's game, I love 3 up front. Dublin will drop back. There'll be times when Dublin on Sunday will have maybe 1-2 in the full forward line. Meath will do the same. But because the conditioning of both teams are so good, Joe, they are able to get up and down the pitch. But it's down the levels that you see when these tactics are incorporated that the game has just fallen way, way behind.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And to be fair, that was, I think, the case in the men's as well. The further up the food chain you went, the spectacle was still very good, but when you had less brilliant teams employing those tactics, it was a fairly grim spectacle then.
Yeah, like the Intermediate Championship this year, good friend of mine, Brona Sheridan, former Cavan captain, she's coaching with Cavan, and she just felt this year at intermediate level, it was just so frustrating. You know, they tried to play football. You were playing against teams, she said at times they had nobody up front. And it comes back to coaching. You know, as players, you do want to play football. There's a lot of good players at intermediate level. There's a lot of good players at junior level. But for some reason, off the pitch, we're deciding to go back to those tactics. And It's not great to watch.
Interesting. Noelle, your perspective on that?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it was something that you could see kind of starting to sneak in a little bit. Certainly my last year I was playing, you'd kind of be bored at times as a forward, just the ball going back and forward and back and forward. It wasn't really a game that I liked to play. So I'd agree. I think then, with Meath's success, they were able to play that game so well because they had, as you say, such a high level of fitness. And I think Dublin in 2023 as well, when they won, did employ that to a certain extent, and then were able to, I suppose, the kind of old Donegal style back from 2012, where they did break fast. They'd, the likes of Carla Rowe, Jen Dunn, Ida Shaddad as well, really strong running players to be able to play that game. But yeah, I'd agree as well from a coaching point of view. And I think a lot of that leaks in from kind of the underage structure. I'd still be very critical of the way the LGFA handled the underage structure and how, they let that just fall to the wayside around 2020, 2021. They just didn't hold an underage structure. So, a large group of players there who had no experience stepping up from maybe under 16 to under 18, under 20, under 20s, then all of a sudden they to come up and play senior football, and they're probably good footballers, but perhaps they don't have either the conditioning or the kind of skills that they would have been nurtured at that kind of stage. So then what are you left with is to try combat other players with a blanket defense. I think that kind of feeds into it as well.
Okay, very interesting. And well, I know integration is sort of, I was going to say bubbling away in the background. I don't even know how much it's bubbling. There's an attempt to get it bubbling. But is there any talk within the game, Nadine, of new rules in the short term, or will that wait longer?
Personally, Joe, I'd be really surprised.
Okay. There's no great groundswell.
No, and I feel with the LGFA sometimes, and I know I sound overly critical here and I'm often accused of being critical, but I feel when there is talk and a want perhaps in the media and from players, it's completely ignored. So I would be very surprised if anything came to Congress in the next 2 or 3 years. And if it does, I'd be very surprised if it was passed.
Right.
Simple as that. Okay. Yeah, I just can't see it.
It's strange given the men have kind of set such a precedent,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not about copying the men. We're not in competition with the men. Nobody's in competition with each other here. We're all the one. We will be all the one officially very soon. And, the men took in the Hooter system from the Ladies Association. It took a while, but I mean, it works. Yeah. They tried out the black card, the sin bin. It worked for them for a while. They changed it. So you're just learning from each other, and there's no harm. If it works, try it. If it doesn't, you can always revert.
Noelle, Nadine mentioned the tackle, which I think comes up fairly routinely. Like, there were probably 2 viral moments this season. One was Carla Rowe's back heel, which is obviously in the good. And then, I remember even in here, John Green, our Sunday Independent sports editor, marched over to me one morning with his phone and said, "Look at this tackle." And it was Vicky Wall against Kildare. Sin binned for this, So that's been an ongoing issue, the tackle in ladies football. Why can't that be addressed? I mean, that's not a big change.
There's always been a lot of talk about it. I remember back playing with Dublin, 2018, around that time, it was something that Mick was very frustrated about. I think, sometimes teams were a little bit critical about us because we might have been seen as being a bit too physical. There was times we were drawing some frees, and I know Mick had gotten, referees in to try counsel us on what the tackle was. And it just didn't seem like there was any consistency even from that, where, we'd be getting coached from referees about what they wanted to see as a clean tackle, and then, you'd go play another match and it would be completely inconsistent. And then on the flip of that, you've strong players, you've fast players, you do a lot of, as I said, strength and conditioning, and, you can't. What can you do if you're running a full pace and you run into someone, and you've a case then where if you're coaching a player playing against Vicky Wall, you tell them to just stand there because likely it's going to get a free in your favour. So I don't know who it's favouring. I don't know what spectacle they're trying to do. It just kind of lessens the game, I think. And I'm not really sure if there's any appetite, as Nadine said, from the LGFA to try adapt that.
Okay, interesting. And as a player in more recent years, is it always enforced, or are there certain days where you realise, this referee is going to let this go a little bit? Is there a fairly wide spectrum, or is it fairly rigidly enforced?
No, well, when I was playing, it was definitely a wide spectrum. You just have some people who it was a bugbear that they had. This year, it does seem to be something that they seem to be focusing in a little bit. Okay. And there definitely seems to be specific players that they seem to have a little bit more of a bugbear towards.
Okay. Vicky Wall, their chief in the crosshairs. Right, interesting.
Yeah, I think Jen Dunn as well a little bit when she was, with Dublin too.
Okay. So that'll just kind of continue on, as your sense, Nadine?
Yeah, I'm just laughing back. I loved when Mick just disregarded the whole thing and Dublin just went for it.
Right.
And it worked. And I mean, he was dead right, because technically in the rule book, you can only tackle a player when the ball is mid-air, mid-solo. I mean, that's completely outrageous. It's a fantastic skill, but how often do we see that? So I loved how Mick coached that Dublin team, because it was hands in, hands out. They used their body. And another player back then, and Noelle remembers, she played, Lindsay Peat, got absolutely done. And I mean, I always thought, if Lindsay Peat was treated fair on that pitch, would she have gone to rugby as soon? Perhaps we would have kept her in our game, and she was a fantastic footballer. But yeah, it's just going to keep going. I think what Noelle was saying there about referees, They very much enforce the charge, as it's called in the rule book. But in terms of the tackle, I mean, the Dublin-Galway game, Seamus Mulville, from Kerry, a couple of weeks ago, he reffed a game and nobody could put a hand on each other. And that Galway Dublin game, like, it was great because like, it was physical, it was a great game of football, but you could see the Galway players getting visibly annoyed because he wasn't blown for anything. So even in terms of a single referee, it's just, you can't predict what way they're going to ref a game.
Right.
So it's just their interpretations.
Yeah, because I mean, even like on a good day, it has a fairly wide interpretation.
Oh, absolutely. It can vary from half to half in a game of football. It can vary from who's winning the game. It's really frustrating. And then you watch the men's game and it's fairly standard. I mean, the odd time there might be, talk about a ref or complaints about a ref, but it's very rare, Joe. Whereas I feel in the women's game, every week we're talking about at least one match.
Right, okay. In broad terms, because someone could tune in and we've gone referees, we've gone the rules. Has it been a good season or has it been miserable?
It's been okay.
Only okay.
Yeah, for me anyway. And I mean, you could talk to somebody else and they'll feel it was brilliant. I spoke about this a few weeks ago. If you're not watching matches every single weekend and you see Meath are back in a final and you look at results throughout the year, Waterford have come through, you'd think, wow, it's levelled out a bit. Dublin aren't dominating as much as they used to, Cork, etc. The standard obviously has risen and that is the way it's been portrayed across the board. But for me, it's kind of been the opposite. I think standards have probably dropped a little bit because, let's be honest, 40 of our best players are in Australia. So, of course, the spectacle is going to drop a little. And I think it's kind of been a meeting in the middle as opposed to everybody catching up to the Dublins and the Corks of this world. The semi-finals were really good. They were entertaining. The quarterfinals were all one-sided, heavily one-sided. And before that, you looked at the groups and you could predict them fairly easily. The only shock was probably Armagh not making it out of the group. That was mainly due to injury. So it's been fine, Joe. And I just think maybe, as we spoke about at the top of the show, because the men's game has been so spectacular, you're nearly drawn to that. Now, obviously, I'd always watch the women's games first, but it's just been fine. Yeah. For me, yeah.
Yeah. Noelle, do you share that view?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a story point of view, I suppose it wasn't a final that I was expecting, and ripping up the script from that point of view, I suppose a little bit of excitement. It's probably unfortunate that the men's season had such a brilliant season, and then these matches were kind of sandwiched and kind of lost possibly in amongst them. So, like as Nadine said, you probably need to be a good fan and go searching for the matches to try find them or follow them up, which is probably a little bit of a pity. But yeah, I think, you would hope that Dublin and Meath come back in, Kerry still being a good team, Galway still being a good team, that at least it's not another case of, Kerry going and winning a few in a row. There's still a little bit of a mix and some stories there.
The AFLW situation, I didn't realise we're up to 40 now. That's
at least, I'd say.
Very significant. Yeah. So, for instance, a couple of Meath players, Vicky Wall included, have delayed returning to Australia because their season starts on the 14th of August. So they've missed a fair chunk of pre-season. Is that generally the done thing? The AFLW teams are generally amenable if players in All-Ireland final, All-Ireland semi-final, or does it vary?
Yeah, it seems to vary. You have your tiered players, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and you're looking at Vicky and Sinead Goldrick. Obviously, they'd definitely be tier 1 players. They've both won championships over there in the last few years. So it seems to be on a, I suppose, different basis for most players. A lot of players have stayed. They've joined their teams for the championship here and then left straight after. But I think there will be a push, Joe, from now on that they're going to be there for pre-season. I mean, the two girls have missed pre-season essentially.
Yeah. I think when you're especially trying to adapt to a new sport, it's a major concession.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Aoibhinn Cleary, Aoibhinn Leahy, the Meath captain, she's gone over for the first time now in a couple of weeks, and she was saying that she was practicing with her dad in the back garden.
Yeah. But you're going to a professional environment. Yeah, it's not ideal. I think they're going to clamp down on this.
Yeah,
soon.
I think so. And, we were talking before as well. I mean, that league is operating at a 50 million loss per annum for the last 2 years, I think. So if they're paying these tier 1 players big money, they are not going to want them over playing Gaelic football for 2 months of their pre-season. So yeah, I think it will change. Could be a good thing that it might put pressure on players and they might choose to stay, which would be great. But I think it could go the other way. And Noelle might know more on Jennifer Dunn. You would have loved her to have been playing for Dublin this year. She's been one of their best players over the last 7-8 years, and she obviously chose to stay, which is a shame. And Orla Lally Meath midfielder with 2 All-Ireland medals. So, you know, we've lost a lot of our great players, Joe. And if things don't change here, I feel we'll lose more.
Yeah, it's hard to compete with that offer of sunshine and money, Noelle.
Yeah, I mean, like I'd say a lot of our great players. I think, you know, there was 2020, 2021 and 2022, the player of the years, Amy Mack and Vicky Wall and Eve McLaughlin all went over then to play AFLW. And, you know, as you say, I absolutely wouldn't blame the girls. They're offered to go over to play in Australia, where possibly a lot of their friends are, given the way, you know, the number of young people that's over there at the moment. They're getting paid money. They get an opportunity to play a professional sport, and at the moment they have the capability to be able to leave that door open. You know, if they want to go back to play with their county. So, I wouldn't criticise anybody at all. There's no onus on them to stay with the LGFA. But I suppose you should be seeing the same case with the men if that was the case. But obviously there's something in the GAA that's, you know, something worth staying. The GAA are obviously offering players something that's worthwhile them staying around that, you know, these players aren't seeing with the LGFA. And I'm kind of surprised that it's like the AFLW have allowed it to kind of stay this way for so long. We were kind of expecting nearly every year we're saying, oh, but next year they won't allow them to come back, and it seems that they are. So They obviously still see some worth in it. You know, I guess that maybe there is a kind of boost to the team in getting a kind of well-known Irish player over there to join them. But it's unfortunate because you don't want to lose your players. You said, you know, Orla Lally, you'd love to see her playing with me this year. She's a fantastic player, really good quality, great athlete. So it's a pity from that point of view that we lose so many of those players.
Yeah. One of the talking points around All-Ireland Final Day is always the attendance, in part because over the last decade it's been such a good story for the sport. From 14 to 19, to set the context, pre-COVID really, COVID definitely interrupted a great trend. 14 to 19, there was the happy coincidence of Dublin being in 7 finals in effect and winning 5 All-Irelands in those 7 years. And the attendance has kept going up almost 5,000 every year. So in 18, it hit the 50,000 marker. In 19, 56,000. Then COVID came. And subsequent to that, there have still been very good days, like 23, 46,000 for Dublin beating Kerry, 22, 46,000 for Meath against Kerry. So outside of Dublin final, 46,000. Last year, there was a slight drop to 30,000 for Kerry against Galway. Any sense of what we're expecting, Nadine, this Sunday?
You'd hope 40 to 45, okay. I'd imagine, as you alluded to there. Dublin obviously bring a very good crowd. Meath have great support this year. Have done actually since they won that first All-Ireland in 21. Proximity to Croke Park, obviously. I think last year as well we saw a huge drop-off, Joe, a mixture of the split season and also the Women's World Cup was on. Or was it the Women's?
The Olympics? The
Olympics, maybe. There was people were away, basically. There was a lot of different sporting events on globally, and I think that had a big impact. Okay. So yeah, look, this year 45, and it is great, but I mean, it's still a half-empty stadium, you know, and I sat there last week. I was in for Donegal, obviously in Kerry, and I hadn't been at a men's final since 2014, and I'd forgotten just how amazing a full Croke Park is. And while 45,000 will be amazing, I mean, you just think for those teams, imagine what it would be like if there was 70, 80,000. And, you know, I was just looking up stats this week and there's 29,000 registered LGFA members in Dublin. There's, I think, 12 or maybe 13 in Meath. There's a population of 1.6 million between both counties. You know, there's a lot of young girls there. And I sat actually and looked at the number of young girls at the match last weekend with their parents, which was absolutely amazing. But I just thought, geez, if Kerry and Dublin were playing, or if Kerry and Donegal were playing this weekend in the women's, would half of those young girls be brought to the game by their parents? And the answer is probably no.
It's a good old trek up, you know.
It is a trek. No, it absolutely is a trek. And it's great that it's going to men's. But then you have to think, you know, those little girls will grow up. They'll play football. They might play for their counties at some point. How would their parents feel if they were playing an All-Ireland final in a half-empty stadium? You know, it's questions like this that we do have to ask ourselves now, because you just can't keep relying on the same cohort of people to go to the matches. And there are enough people there. I think if we just start thinking long term, there are enough people around to fill that stadium and go to more games in a general sense. You know, the attendance at league games this year was really poor. It definitely went down. And I suppose you have that flip side of, you have TG Cahir, and it's amazing. You know, we have so many matches on television. It's great to be able to watch them online. Is it then taken away from attendances at matches? You know, and then what do you do if you take them off viewing? Are people going to go? So it's you know,
chicken
to
and egg,
double
that one.
Yeah, exactly. But I just think for the finals, while we always pat ourselves in the back, I suppose, for a great crowd, it could be bigger. And it should be bigger.
Well, it's funny you say that, because my sense always of we hit 50, we hit 56. I understood it was a very good news story, of course, and you do need a marquee event maybe for, you know, as a gateway drug for some 8-year-old to fall in love with the sport. I get that, but it always struck me as like, God, that's one hell of a sticking plaster when you look at the attendances in all the other games. Like, how good can you feel about one kind of bandwagon event?
That's it. And, you know, their tagline this year is, it's not just a final.
Right.
Yeah.
But please come to the final.
Yeah, please come to the final. It's not just final, but we do a lot of good work throughout the year, which they do. Don't get me wrong. The LGFA do tremendous work. They have, you know, they've built the sport massively, especially over the last 20 years. But I think that they do have to look at the bigger picture and look at new ways to try and get people to games, because what's happening now just isn't working. Yeah.
And what I would say, and I could be wrong, like it's a very subjective thing, and Noelle, I'd be fascinated if you're taking it as well. Personally, I'm not sure about the latest type of marketing around it, because there's almost a degree of like, for you to be like an ethically moral good person, you should support women's sport. And I just think that's all wrong. Like the Lidl ad is kind of on that tone. No one says like, you should watch Katie Taylor's fight because ethically that makes you a good person. If you're going to watch a man's fight, you should watch Katie Taylor. It's just, Katie Taylor's amazing. Here's the, you know, not the trash talking, but here are the interesting subplots and the angles. And like, you wouldn't talk about a men's game that way. I sort of feel it's gone a weird direction, and marketing people have taken control of it in that way. And I don't think anyone wants to be kind of preached to. I'm not sure about that. Like, talk about the sport and the interesting angles in it. That'd be my sense personally, as just like watching the whole broad spectrum of how sports marketed. I'm not sure about that angle. Noelle, sorry, you come in.
Yeah, no, I'm so like, I literally was about to say the same thing. I hate that little ad. I thought it looked like a charity ad.
Yeah.
And it really annoyed me. I thought it was really condescending. I thought it showed us like that we were these like poor girls that, you know, it won't mean any value to us unless, you know, you come and watch us, please. And I just, as I say, I don't think people respond to that type of stuff. You don't want people to feel guilted to go in to watch a match. Like, you know, it was, again, you know, I keep going back to Mick, but it was one of the things that he said. Like, he was like, you're not going to get crowds if you don't give them something to watch or something to cheer about. And you spoke about the 2014 All-Ireland and kind of the boost from that. And like, yeah, I think, you know, having Dublin, it probably helped given proximity, but I also think it's not a small thing that coincided with AIG sponsorship. The first time they sponsored the Four Codes, you know, all of a sudden Sinead Goldrick was very visible. She was up in billboards, she was in ads, and they were highlighting what was good about Gaelic and like ladies Gaelic. You know, they were showing, you know, one of the best players, a phenomenal athlete, and that was kind of the way the marketing was going for a lot of the time pre-COVID. And then I don't know what switched. All of a sudden, this was kind of their bugbear, that, you know, this half a fan and this uphill battle and this uphill struggle and things like that. And I don't really understand why they were allowed to kind of just run with it. And I kind of thought it was very contrasting when you looked at the way the Irish women's team, the football team, or the soccer team was marketed. It was very different.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of just like, we know these are good athletes. This is why they're good athletes. So get behind them and support them. And, you know, I think that works. And you see the support growing behind that. And I just don't think the way they're going is the right way. I think you need to showcase good players, and there's brilliant players. Like, if you saw, you know, little girls, that Carla Rowe clip, I'm sure there's lots of people practicing back heels in the garden. Like, that's the kind of stuff that captures attention. And you kind of say, I want to go watch Carla Rowe. I want to go watch, you know, Vicky Wall. And again, you have the caveat of, it's unfortunate that these players, you know, do tend to be leaving, or we're losing them because there aren't the big marquee names. Like, you know, the first match Nadine spoke about, girls being brought by parents. Like, I was brought to a Mayo match to watch Cora Staunton because my dad is a massive Mayo fan, and he would watch any good Mayo footballer, and he wanted to go to watch her play, and that fantastic Mayo team as well. So like that's kind of the angle that it should be. It should be highlighting the individuals, creating stories around the individuals and stories around the team, not stories around like, oh, we're the poor cousin of the men's team, but please come and watch us. It'll make us feel better.
Yeah. No,
I'm glad I could get that off my chest.
No, it's so well said. I'm glad it's more powerful coming from you. But I'm in disbelief watching these ads and that marketing. I think it's so condescending. It's not good. And the best thing for the women's game in the last 10 years, the documentary around that Dublin team. That was so brilliant. Like, I sort of fell in love with that team, and I'm from Kildare, and I was like, God, this should be an annual thing, and not just Dublin. Like, any number of teams should do this. And I was talking to someone who was part of the 2023 win, the Dublin one, where Dublin didn't really expect to win that year. Mick Bowen said as much, and that person was telling me like a big issue with the team that year was from an S&C point of view. They just felt they were way behind, and they kind of put this program in place. And the person I was talking to is like, it might take a year or two, but they worked so ferociously hard that by the time the All-Ireland final came, they were just running over teams. They got themselves into an amazing level of fitness. And you think, well, that's interesting. That's a story, not like you should come and watch us because otherwise, you're not a good person.
Well, just speaking of Cora Staunton, Noelle talked about going to watch her when she was younger. When you think about it, there's been more marketing around Cora Staunton since she stopped playing Gaelic football. There has been, in some ways, AFL, she's obviously with Doherty, but, the LGFA have Vicky Wall right now, one of our best athletes in the country. And what marketing is there around Vicky? Has she been approached by the LGFA to do anything? Perhaps she has. Maybe she has, and she turned them down. But there are so many players there who could be marketed in a better way than wheeling a trolley in Lidl for a championship launch or going out to a beach for a couple of photographs.
I think you
it's the same thing every year,
and it's about it's innovation and quick thinking, and so say after the back heel, which goes viral, like you could easily have a competition then across every GAA club in the country who can do the best version of that back heel. Send your clip in, here's the hashtag, get it trending for a week. There's all of this stuff which is kind of
easy.
there.
Well, it's there. It's
relatively
easy. It needs to be picked up on.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, it's a bit negative. It's my fault. I keep asking you negative questions. Let's talk about the final then. So we're hoping for a good crowd. You could look at the form line and be fairly concerned that this could be one-way traffic in that in the league, Dublin won by 16 points, Leinster Championship in April by 7 points, and then the Leinster final was a 4-point win. The one kind of caveat there, I suppose, is that Dublin were 4 points adrift in that game and then scored 8 unanswered points in the closing 15 minutes. Now, I saw the Meath manager, Shane McCormack, say, like, if you look at that and assume, oh, we're not fit, that was not the story from his point of view in that game. But the fact that Meath were up by 4 with 15 minutes to go, if you're, as a neutral, hoping for a big game on Sunday, Nadine, that's kind of what you're clinging to a little bit?
A little bit. It was May. I made the mistake in the past of writing Meath off very early in the championship. More worrying for me, not Dublin's last quarter, more worrying for me from a Meath perspective is you look at that Dublin forward line that day and the Dublin forward line who will likely start on Sunday, and you have Nicole Owens didn't play, Hannah Turrell and Niamh Heatherton were the only two players who played the whole game. Carla Rowe only came on as a sub, and Orla Nolan didn't play at all.
Yeah.
So it's a lot stronger. I mean, that Dublin forward line that played that day, very young, relatively unknown, in Dublin context. I think for me, they were excellent. I thought in patches in that game, they used Croke Park to perfection, the way a Meath team usually does. They played Dublin really well. They stretched them. They got really good counters. They drew Dublin in for frees. When you have Emma Duggan, obviously those frees are going to go over. But another worrying aspect of that game was when Dublin attacked Meath, they actually looked like scoring a goal in the first half on every second attack, but they overplayed the ball. So while the big pitch in Croke Park will suit Meath to an extent, if Dublin click, there is a danger of them,
really clicking.
Of really clicking.
Because it's very interesting, Noelle, just looking at the two teams through their 7 games thus far. Meath have had the same 14 starters through the 7 games, and Dublin in 7 games have used 30 different players.
Yeah, I mean, part of that I think is Dublin are coming towards the end of the season. They're getting a lot of injured players back. So you mentioned Orla Nolan, she's come back from a cruciate injury. Nicole Owens as well, coming back from Achilles injury. And it's that Dublin team. There's a lot of them that are a lot of very experienced players, but they've also been able to use the league, the early stages of the Leinster Championship, to kind of bleed a few younger players in. Talks of like Chloe Darby, who was really good in that Leinster final as well. And you can see the benefit from it. Like Dublin have had 17 different scorers throughout the championship so far, versus Meath 10. So I think from a Dublin point of view, they have a lot of options depending on which way the game is going. Whereas Meath with their panel, you'd kind of wonder what if Dublin are asking kind of different questions of them, how adaptable they will be able to be to that, which will be interesting.
Yeah, I think with Meath, when you look at their substitutes in the last 3 or 4 games, they've made 1 change in defence, 1 change in midfield, and 1 change in attack, and it's been the 3 substitutes who've come on each time. Okay. They've massive loss of cornerback Katie New. She seemed to have a really bad knee injury. I wouldn't be surprised if it was her ACL in the semi-final. She's been their best defender all year. Incredible. And Sean Ennis came in for her at half-time. But Sean Ennis has been their closing defender essentially throughout the championship. So you look and think Sean Ennis will probably start.
Yes.
She probably doesn't have 65 minutes in her. Who is going to come on to replace her? And looking at that full back line, Mary-Kate Lynch, their full back, fantastic season, but they're lining up against Kate Sullivan, probably Carla Rowe, switching in and out with Niamh Heatherton and Hannah Turrell. And you actually look at it and you think, who is going to match up with who?
Yeah, okay.
So it's very worrying.
And were they as thin squad-wise in 21 and 22?
No, they had people coming off the bench. They probably used to make 3 or 4 subs. They had impact subs up front, but they were supremely fit, Joe, back then. And now, while they are very fit this season, I don't think they're as fit as they were back then.
So even Shane McCormick saying the 8 unanswered points, nothing to do with fitness. It may have something. I just think it's strength and depth. Okay. And up front as well, you're looking there. Niamh McEntee has come on. She probably will come on for Kerry Cole or perhaps Megan Tyne on the half forward line. But outside of that, if they're making changes, which they probably will have to do, let's be honest, I just don't think they'll have the impact. Like you look at Dublin's offerings there, like Hannah Leahy can come on in the back line. Aoife Kane has 3 or 4 All-Irelands and she may not start. Up front, Laura Grendon has come on. Sophie McIntyre, Noelle spoke about Chloe Darby. So while they're not household names, the forwards who are going to come in, they've been very impressive in the Dublin Club Championship, and they've been impressive when they came on. So, right. That could be a massive factor for them. And you look, if Meath suffer an injury early on, who, especially defensively, you do look at that bench and you think who is going to come on for them. Yeah. We do have new Dublin management, Noelle. So Paul Casey and Derek Murray, both former Dublin footballers, have come in. Paul, a selector with the ladies set up since 18 and Murray involved since 22. Were these always the natural choices, made perfect sense when Mick Bowen walked away? And have they, to your eye, made any great discernible change in how Dublin go about their business?
Yeah, I think, I don't think there was anybody else that the girls or kind of anybody around Dublin would have wanted to step into that. I think what you wanted is just, I suppose, a little bit of freshness, and then, being able to keep that consistency. So it's meant that like a lot of the backroom team, so we spoke about Dublin strength and conditioning from 2023, Sammy Dowling, who came in that year, he's still there. He was with the men's team back in 2011, went to Leinster for a year. So he's, a serious person to have in your backroom team from the strength and conditioning, and they were able to keep him on. So I think from that point of view, it's probably freshened up things a little bit in terms of, Sammy or Paul would be very defence focused, whereas Derek would be kind of more attack focused. So it means that, they're both able to kind of give that attention to both sides, which has been great. And while still, they've gotten kind of rid of that bias that I suppose a lot of players who would have been there under Mick might have felt, that kind of, they've been there for 2 or 3 years, they weren't getting a chance. And then all of a sudden, something changes a little bit at the top, and, it kind of, it breeds a little bit of freshness into it. And it also, you see likes of Aoife Curran, who would have been with us from kind of 2016, in and out to 2017, 2018. she's come back in. A few players who maybe were thinking of, stepping away, they've kind of stayed around and given it one more year as well. So I think it's been that perfect balance of, not everything kind of throwing everything out and trying to start again with the younger players, but still giving those players a little bit of a chance to, to step up.
Noelle, we should mention Hannah Tyrrell as well, before we forget. Kind of a freak athlete, seems to be heading off into the sunset, albeit she's in line to be top scorer. So I don't know, no one's pushing her out the door, I'd say, but a remarkable innings.
Yeah, I know Hannah, I played underage with her. So we played together from under 14 all the way through to minor. We played in college together. And for a lot of the time, she was our goalkeeper. So we were very lucky to benefit from her kickouts. But she obviously just her attitude that she has is fantastic. The way she looks after herself is amazing, and the way she's been able to slot back in and just be one of the country's best forwards since she came in 2021 has been phenomenal. And yeah, she's kind of been saying for a few years that this might be the last year. I think everybody's hoping that she'll stay on, but obviously from a physical point of view, it's not easy to kind of gear yourself up to pick up the gear bag again in January every year. But yeah, look, she's the top scorer so far in the senior championship. I don't think anybody's going to top her this year. She's been phenomenal, and she really complements, I think, having players like Kate Sullivan and Caoimhe O'Connor around her who are good ball carriers who can kind of just break those lines of defence. And you just see Hannah just sitting into the pocket at the top of the D, waiting to be an option if needed to go backwards. And then Eve Heatherton as well. The two of them give that kind of physicality, that ability to mix it up, to either play a few high balls in and see if something comes off that, and good fielders. So there's a nice kind of mix there in the Dublin forwards.
For me, the management, Nadine, it's Shane McCormack who took over in 23. It's a tough time to take over. I mean, just keep it going, Shane. That's the general request. How is he finding it, do you think?
Yeah, he had 2 years with Armagh, and probably more pressure in Armagh at that time. They were really pushing for an All-Ireland. And as you said, when he came into me, things were low. They were really low. And I think what he did, he just assembled the best squad possible. He went round the clubs. He got a good grip around him himself. And I think the biggest thing for me is getting Vicky Wall to commit this year for the full year. Like, for me, that's why Meath are in a final.
Here. Yeah. It's two not getting past the quarterfinal stage.
Yeah, and really not getting past the quarterfinals. Yeah. And I mean, there was, Davy Nelson left midway through a season. There was just a lot of discord in those couple of years. But and it's not, it's not a David Clifford Kerry here, one woman team with Meath and Vicky. It's not at all. But what she brings to them, I haven't been in their changing room, I haven't been on their training pitch, but you just know by the demeanour of Vicky Wall in interviews, how she plays, her focus. I imagine she just drove standards up to where they need to be to reach an All-Ireland, and you have to give her huge credit for that, because the previous 2 years, obviously, she was in and out with the Sevens, she was AFL, and it's no coincidence, as I said, that Meath are in a final and Vicky has been there from January.
Okay. So, to kind of sum up and get final thoughts, Nadine, you sound a little concerned, I have to say.
No, because the last time I was concerned about Meath in 2021, they went out and wiped the floor with Dublin. So, no, I would be very surprised if Dublin didn't win this game, Joe. And I don't expect them to win by 10 points. I think they should win by 3 to 5 points. Would I be surprised if Meath pulled off a shock? I wouldn't, because of the aforementioned Vicky Wall. We haven't even reached Emma Duggan yet, or Ciara Smith up front. But I just think with Dublin all round, they're more balanced. I think a huge thing is going to be Meath have had players like Marion Farrelly in the middle, Niamh Galgally at centre forward. They've had huge impact, but I just can't see them having that impact, those two players, on Sunday, because Martha Byrne will pick up Niamh Galgally, and I just think Galgally will struggle with the physical presence of Martha Byrne and her experience and how she holds the pitch, how she holds that back line. And I just think with Marion Farley, she's delivered from distance. She's landed 3 or 4 points for me in nearly every game. And I just think the physicality around the middle it could possibly wipe her in a sense. She still have a good game, she will have an impact, but those couple of points that she adds to Meath every game. I just think with Ailish O'Dowd and Heatherton, Nicole Owens, Orla Nolan, whoever's around the middle, I think they could stifle Marion Farley in that regard. So a lot more pressure will be on Vicky Wall and it will be on Emma Duggan, and they probably will deliver. But I just think all over the pitch, Dublin they just have too much. I mean, again, we haven't mentioned Goldrick. There's so many players. So
fires to put out.
Yeah, and I just think for Dublin, unless psychologically they listen to outside noise or things don't work in that regard on the day, that's the only way I see them losing this game. But it could happen, but I'd be very, very surprised.
Yeah. Noelle, do you see it massively differently?
No, I'd agree. Yeah, like if you look, I think it will come down. Like Meath's backline, they've conceded 969, I think, so far in the championship. Dublin have scored 23-95.
Oh my goodness.
Now 8 of those goals were against Leitrim.
Yeah.
But like, take that away and you still, double digits in terms of the goals they've scored. So I think, if Dublin get their forward line humming, I think that will make a big difference. But like, you've game winners in Meath, like Emma Duggan and Vicky Wall. Like, again, like Emma Duggan is a phenomenal player. She makes that team hum. Again, she's been their top scorer. If Dublin aren't disciplined, she has a chance to punish them in terms of just slotting over frees. Again, Marion Farley as well has, she scored a lot of left-footed, but like long distance points. So, she could make a big difference. But I think a lot has to go right for Meath for them to get over the line. But again, like, this is exactly where Meath want. People have written them off. They're going to be using that to be a massive motivating factor. But again, like, Meath haven't beaten Dublin since 2021. There's been, I think, 3 Leinster finals. I think all of them have been in Croke Park that they've played in. That Leinster final that you talked about, I was actually very worried when Dublin were 4 points down, because you had the Meath fans coming in for the men's game, and I thought, that kind of noise and getting in behind them was going to lift Meath, and Dublin managed to hold on. So yeah, I think Dublin just do look stronger. We've mentioned the likes of Jess Tobin is back, Orla Nolan's come back from injury, Aoife Kane as well. She's a great option to come off the bench with fresh legs. She's a real kind of great ability to go forward to get important points when needed. Hopefully, I don't know how bad Caoimhe O'Connor's injury is as well from the semi-final. She could be a bit of a loss in terms of the pace that she brings to Dublin in just kind of that link play. They did look in the earlier kind of rounds of the championship when they missed her, that they were tending to get back very well, but just having that link play, that pacey player to be able to carry the ball, she brings a lot to them. But and Lara McGee obviously as well is out with a cruciate injury. But I think they'll have enough to get over the line, I would hope. But I don't think it's going to be an easy win. I don't think Meath will kind of go out and be beaten convincingly at all. I think it will probably come down to those kind of that last quarter of the game.
Okay, well, that'd be good, because I think we were just chatting upstairs before I came down. It's a clear runway. Sunday is a quiet sporting day, so a good game will definitely kind of capture the floating voter. It does all start on TG Carr, by the way, with the junior final, 11:45 a.m. That is tough. I mean, come on, 11:45 a.m. Sorry, we're being negative again. It's great. That's high performance. 11:45, go out and play final. Antrim Loud, 11:45 a.m. Then 1:45 Laois Tyrone, and then 4:15 we have the senior finals. So, like I said, live on TG Carr. Guys, that's a brilliant preview, and great to get your thoughts on the season at large. So, Noelle Healy, 5-time All-Ireland winner, 4-time All-Star doctor. Where did it all go wrong? What's with the you not get the you make an effort in life, Noelle, to do things? No.
Yeah.
And Nadine Doherty, who you'll read in the Sunday Independent, and former Donegal captain as well. Thanks so much, both of you. That was brilliant. Thank you.